Stoicism is a wisdom that is open to everyone, no matter whether you are rich or poor, the color of your skin, who you love, or how much you know. Epictetus, a great Stoic thinker, lived as a slave for more than 30 years before gaining his freedom. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor from a very wealthy family in Rome, also followed Stoicism to seek virtue and self-control. Both faced life's challenges, abandoning bad habits such as greed, lust, lack of control, and anxiety. They trained their minds to deal with fears and worries that they could control. In this way, the Stoics learned a valuable lesson: the importance of accepting and being indifferent to things that are beyond our control, such as tomorrow's weather. In everyday life, we come across situations that are beyond our control, such as the actions of other people, even those closest to us like family or friends. We don't have the power to control the society around us or influence the opinions others have of us. However, there is one sphere in which we have complete control: ourselves. We can shape our wills, define our intentions, and guide our actions. What's more, we have control over how we react to what happens to us. In applying this teaching, the Stoics invite us to focus on what is within the reach of our influence. They encourage us to cultivate self-discipline and self-understanding, reminding us that by mastering our own reactions and choices, we can find a deeper sense of peace and satisfaction, regardless of external circumstances. This approach puts the power of transformation in our hands, encouraging us to be the masters of our own destiny, even when the course of life presents us with unpredictable challenges. We all have the ability to control our emotions and reactions. Stoicism is a way of thinking that teaches us to do what is right no matter what, to take full responsibility for our actions, and to train our feelings to act in a way that avoids bad feelings such as shame, dishonor, and self-indulgence, which are caused by harmful behavior. The life of Marcus Aurelius shows us how Stoicism can help us fight against harmful behaviors and guide us towards virtue. Let's explore this further and learn how to confront these harmful behaviors. Before we continue with the lessons in this video, I want to ask you to comment on which harmful behavior you are trying to overcome and the date you are watching this video. I'm working on that too. Making this simple statement is a courageous step towards overcoming any harmful behavior in your life. Mark in your calendar to come back to this video and check the progress you've made. Make a real commitment to this transformation. He who does not share light creates his own darkness. Marcus Aurelius was emperor from 161 BC to 180 BC and was the absolute ruler of the world during this period. During his 19-year reign, he could have indulged in all his desires, impulsive behaviors and pleasures, something that was common and acceptable for the emperors who preceded him. He had the power to use all the wealth in the world for his personal benefit, to engage in intimate relationships whenever he wanted and wherever he wanted, and to enjoy luxury and extravagance with the best clothes and food available. As the highest authority, his orders were considered law. Marcus Aurelius had the power to take revenge, punish, and even take the life of anyone in Rome without facing consequences. He could also engage in excess, consuming high-quality drinks on a daily basis without restriction. Despite all this absolute power, Marcus Aurelius's life serves as an example of how we can resist temptations and face life's difficulties and challenges without giving in to vices. Marcus Aurelius did not give in to the desire to seek immediate satisfaction, either from the momentary pleasures of vices or from the impulses that lead us to commit them. This valuable lesson he passed on shows us that the ability to resist can be cultivated and turned into a positive habit in our lives. For the Stoics, any virtue achieved by one human being can be achieved by all of us. In other words, if Marcus Aurelius managed to resist all the temptations that power offered him, we who clearly have much less power in our lives can also learn to do the same. By resisting these temptations, Marcus Aurelius highlights the importance of developing the inner strength needed to overcome obstacles. In seeking to achieve similar virtues, we are encouraged to cultivate self-discipline and an understanding of our own impulses. In this way, we can transform resistance to the pursuit of momentary gratification into a positive habit that contributes to a fuller, more balanced life. Each of us has a capacity for thinking that helps us control our feelings, manage our behavior, our actions, and our interactions with others. For 19 years, Marcus Aurelius dedicated himself to disciplining himself, writing in his diary, which was later shared as Meditations, to maintain and pursue dignified conduct. It is in this diary that we find insights into addictions and how they can trap us. Harmless addictions are like a pink elephant in your living room. it would be impossible to ignore it. Depending on the size of your house, you wouldn't even be able to enter the room with it there. However, a single mosquito perched silently on your bedroom wall can go unnoticed. That is, until you wake up the next day all stung and itchy. Harmless addictions often work in the same way. We live with them almost without realizing it, because we often can't even identify them clearly. When we finally notice them, we tend to minimize them, convincing ourselves that they are just harmless distractions. However, just like the silent mosquito that attacks us at night, these habits can become harmful when we least expect it. It's an important lesson in how we must be alert to the habits that lurk in our lives, even if they initially seem completely harmless. Actions such as shopping to relieve stress, watching a bit of pornography to cheer yourself up, complaining about someone at work, criticizing your spouse or a family member, procrastinating on a difficult task, choosing fast food instead of a healthy meal, drinking coffee every half hour, spending hours on social media, and inevitably comparing your life with the seemingly perfect lives posted. These may seem like simple everyday activities, far removed from the idea of addictions associated with people we see on TV. However, these habits have the power to silently trap us, long before we recognize them as addictions. In the words of Marco Aurelio, perverted thieves, murderers, and tyrants gather their supposed pleasures for inspection. Marcus Aurelius warns us about a dangerous path that many human beings tread by emphasizing vices in their lives. These words serve as a warning because bad habits can be like thieves who steal goodness and joy. When you allow temporary and harmful pleasures to control your life, such as indulging in indulgences or behaviors that harm yourself, without realizing it, you are building a path towards your own moral destruction. Don't fall into the trap. Start making choices that lead to success and lasting happiness. The incessant search for momentary pleasures often leads us to ruin. When we condition our happiness on specific actions such as shopping, spending money on unnecessary things, or relying on pornography for sexual satisfaction and love, we run the risk of compromising our emotional well-being. If these behaviors become the only source of contentment, we lose the opportunity to build meaningful connections in the real world and establish healthy relationships with real people. It's important to recognize that basing our happiness on momentary pleasures creates dependencies and limits our ability to find joy in broader, more meaningful experiences. For example, if we need to consume several cups of coffee throughout the day to maintain concentration, we are conditioning our productivity on caffeine, ignoring the intrinsic capacity of our mind and body to concentrate and produce. So by reflecting on these patterns, we can look for more balanced ways of seeking satisfaction and contentment, allowing us to explore a variety of experiences that contribute to a fuller, healthier life. When you get involved in a constant cycle of pointing out faults and complaining, you end up creating a habit of this behavior. Thus, in any place or situation, your brain will automatically look for reasons to criticize or complain, feeding this harmful pattern. Marco Aurelio advises us, whenever we are about to point out a fault in someone, to ask ourselves, what is my fault that is most similar to the one I am about to criticize? Criticism and complaining are silent and destructive addictions. When you constantly avoid challenging tasks, such as studying for an exam or completing a project, opting for easier and less productive activities, you are reducing your ability to cope with life's difficulties and demands. The more you rely on fast food, the harder it will be to change your habits and become a healthy person. If you spend a lot of time on social media, especially comparing your life to others and feeling inadequate, this can negatively affect your self-esteem and mental well-being. This search for approval on social media can become a bad habit and damage your mental health. The trap of addictions is that they lure us in with momentary promises of happiness, making us feel great for a short time. In the end, however, it leaves a trail of problems, eroding our ability to lead a good and meaningful life. The initial pleasure can turn into something harmful, and the ability to control yourself is a powerful tool for fighting this trap. Self-discipline acts as a firm ally in this battle against addictions, helping us to maintain balance and achieve a healthier and more virtuous lifestyle. Marcus Aurelius said, "Dig within yourself. That is where the fountain of good is, and it can gush forth continually if you dig always." The journey of self-discipline is challenging, no doubt. However, it is essential to understand that self-control is directly linked to the ability to resist temptation. When we associate the temptation of addiction with its negative consequences, it loses some of its seductive power. This means recognizing that giving in to addictions usually brings much worse results than resisting them. Now, let's explore this idea a little further. Think of an addiction you might have, something you do over and over again, even though you know it's not the best choice. It could be something like eating too many sweets, spending too much time playing video games, or procrastinating instead of doing your homework. Now take out your cell phone or a piece of paper and divide it into two columns, one for the momentary benefits and one for the harmful consequences. In the momentary benefits column, write down all the things you feel the moment you give in to addiction. Perhaps you feel happy, relaxed, or even excited. It's important to recognize these feelings in order to understand why we give in to these impulses. In the harmful consequences column, list all the things that happen in the long term because of this addiction. It could be that you feel tired, have frequent headaches, or that your concentration decreases. By analyzing these two columns, we can begin to see the difference between momentary gratification and long-term negative impacts. Secondary benefits are like little gifts that addiction gives us. For example, when you put off a task, you may gain some free time, receive attention from someone, even if it's to charge you for being late, or even avoid major responsibilities and commitments. Negative consequences include not achieving your goals, never finishing what you start, and losing confidence in yourself. Once you've filled in the two columns, you'll realize that although seemingly harmless addictions provide momentary rewards, these rewards don't compare to the sense of accomplishment that could be achieved if you got rid of them. Seen in this way, the very act of controlling oneself becomes a source of joy and satisfaction, while temptation becomes a burden of regret and remorse. Stoicism teaches us to be rational, that is, capable of using reason in a constant struggle against vices. It guides us to resist before acting impulsively and not to react compulsively to what happens to us. We can think and decide about our actions. The Stoics call this ability a dominant capacity because it allows us to evaluate our thoughts, feelings, and impulses, distinguishing between good and bad, healthy and unhealthy. Acting on the basis of this evaluation transforms us into rational beings, capable of making conscious and intelligent choices, breaking the bonds of addictions and automatic responses. Getting stuck in addictions isn't easy, but remember that more powerful than any difficult situation is your ability to think. Remember that nothing can happen without your consent. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, "Today I escaped the difficult circumstances, or rather I rejected them, because they were not outside of me but in my own assumptions." No event or situation in itself has the power to control our lives without our permission. All the things you face in life are external and have no access to your mind. This valuable quote from Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we are the masters of our choices and reactions. This teaches us to identify what is within our control and what is not. This may sound a bit complicated, but it's simpler than it sounds. First, we need to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. Secondly, we take responsibility for what we can control: your will, your intentions, your actions, and how you react to what happens are under your control. This practice can take a while to become a habit, but over time, we realize that we can live more peacefully, even in the face of life's challenges. But you have the freedom and control to avoid any environment and situations that could lead you to fall into an addiction. For example, if you decide to quit smoking and get rid of your nicotine addiction, you can't force other people to quit. That's out of your control. However, you can choose not to go to places where everyone smokes all the time to avoid temptation. That is within your power. You have dominion over your mind, not over external events. Understand this, and you will discover your strength. As Marcus Aurelius said, there comes a time when you have to get away from environments, situations, and even friendships that insist on pulling you down. Either you disengage, or you'll be tied to these situations, always stuck in your addictions. By understanding this, we can resist the influence of external factors, avoid the temptations of addictions, and regain control of our own lives. Understanding the difference between what we can control and what we can't is relatively simple, but applying it in everyday life can be challenging and complicated. So if you fall into temptation, make a small mistake or even a big blunder, remember that it doesn't alter or compromise the philosophy you know. It doesn't mean that your ability to make rational choices has disappeared forever. On the contrary, it was just a brief distraction. Returning to old habits, remember that the tools and goals for change are not shaken by the difficulties of the moment. Take a break, regain control of yourself. It's there waiting for you. As Epictetus said, the soul is like a bowl of water, and our impressions are like the ray of light that falls upon it. When the water is agitated, it seems that the light itself is also moving, but it is not. In the same way, when a person loses self-control, it's not their abilities and virtues that are disturbed, but the spirit in which they exist. And when the spirit calms down, these things also calm down. Recognizing when we have made a mistake or failed to abandon our harmful habits is an essential part of personal growth. Even more important, however, is the next step, picking our heads up and moving on. We mustn't allow guilt to engulf us in a suffocating way. It can become a mental trap, an internal prison that prevents us from progressing. Let's consider a practical example. Let's say you've broken your diet or overdone it, and now you're spending hours regretting it. It's crucial not to let guilt turn into a new cycle of addiction. Acknowledging the failure, reflecting on what happened and why you gave in, taking responsibility and then moving on are important steps. It's not about cheating yourself, but about learning from the experience and continuing the effort to improve. This process allows for genuine growth, helping to avoid harmful patterns in the future. As Marcus Aurelius teaches us, recover your senses, turn yourself back on and wake up once again. Now that you've realized that only dreams bother you, see this reality as you see your dreams, deep addictions. Letting go of addictions, whether harmless or deep-seated, is a difficult challenge that takes time. If you've been smoking for 15 years, don't expect to give up cigarettes in a single day of determination. Unfortunately, willpower alone, without strategy, planning, and action, will not bring results. Nothing happens suddenly. In the words of Epictetus, calculate how long you've been addicted in days. For example, if you've been smoking for 15 years, that's 5,475 days of maintaining an addiction. This habit is already deeply ingrained. So don't fool yourself into thinking that just a statement in front of the mirror will make you stop and never fall into temptation again. Make a commitment, but start taking action. Start by mapping out your addictions. What do you do before you practice? For example, in the case of cigarettes, you always smoke after lunch. You've already realized that your trigger is finishing lunch, so change your activity. Go for a walk, do some quick exercise, anything that breaks this pattern of your habit. By mapping out your habits, you have in your hands the triggers that precede and follow your addictions, so it will be easier to avoid them by creating a new routine that breaks your pattern of falling into addictions. Certainly there are more serious habits, such as the use of illegal drugs, for example, and unfortunately this video doesn't have the power to make you stop. That's up to you. A person's happiness depends on them. Marco Aurelius says, "It can be easy to confuse our image with our weaknesses, but we are not our bad habits." Stoicism encourages us to pursue virtue and live our lives with dignity. When we give up and accept vice, we don't just lose, we stop gaining. We stop earning self-respect. We stop raising a family. We stop earning money and living in better financial conditions. We stop showing the world our gifts and talents. As a final reflection on how to overcome our bad habits, I want to share these words. Enough of this miserable, pitiful life. Stop playing games. What are you worried about? What's new here? What's so disconcerting? The cause? Take a good look at it. Or is it the question itself? Then look at it. There's nothing more to see. Also, stop complaining to the gods right now. Become more direct and kind. It's as if you've been examining these things for 100 years or just 3. Marco Aurelius said, "Character, as Joan Dion said, is the willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life. It is the source from which self-respect springs." Marcus Aurelius encourages us not to waste time complaining about things we don't understand or about how things happen around us. The message is clear. We need to take control of our lives, stop being mere spectators, and become the real protagonists. He reminds us that character is not something fixed. It can be built and improved over time. When we commit to this process, the result is respect for ourselves and others. However, this endeavor should not be put off to a distant future. Marco Aurelius challenges us to start building our character right now, while we live, without procrastination. The essence of this teaching lies in taking responsibility for our choices and actions. The counterpoint to this challenge is negligence. the lack of commitment to character development, which, according to Marco Aurelio, is the worst fate. To live without self-love is to constantly surrender to momentary desires, accumulating mistakes through actions and omissions, breaches of trust and unfulfilled promises. So the message is clear. Taking responsibility is the first step towards building a solid character and avoiding a fate of neglect and regret. And well, although it may seem impossible at times, the Stoics knew very well how to guide their lives. They knew very well how to change their lives in a short time. Click on the video on the screen and watch it now.